Hello, I'm International Master Andrew Martin, and I'd like to welcome you to this Foxy Openings DVD on the Sicilian Kan. Aggressive, yet solid and reliable, the Kan is one of the easiest and most rewarding Sicilian defences to play, and ideal for the club player. So join with me now as we begin our investigation. Okay, time now to run over some of the main ideas and themes running through the Sicilian Kan, certainly at the outset. And we'll just take you through the basic moves, where white plays knight takes d4 and black plays a6. The main virtue of black's opening play is the elasticity of the black position. Black doesn't commit himself to any particular configuration or piece placement. There are several ways that black can develop his pieces. The hallmark of the Sicilian Kan is adaptability. Basically, black is adapting to what white is doing, and he's keeping as elastic a position as he can whilst he does so. For instance, white's main moves in this position are, in order, knight c3, bishop d3, and finally c4. And black has different ways of adapting to each. Against c4, I'm going to recommend that black continue with the flexible knight f6 and then queen c7. In particular here, black is retaining options with his d-pawn, and he's keeping the diagonal of the king's bishop open. These are major trumps in black's hand. Black may play d6 or d5 in one go. He may play his bishop to e7. He may play it to b4. It depends what white is doing. At any rate, this is the most flexible way for black to proceed. Going back to the position after a6, after knight c3, I'm going to recommend black proceed with the very aggressive move b5. This is an option black doesn't normally have in the Sicilian at this early stage, and it's an option which I think will intimidate a lot of white players. Going back to a6 after bishop d3, I'm going to recommend that black plays the flexible move g6. It's very important here that black keeps these options open with his d-pawn, because we're going to see games where black plays d6. We're going to see games where black plays an early d5. At any rate, here the main idea initially is to station the king's bishop actively on the long diagonal, to play knight e7, and then to think about the move d5, although we'll see other games where black does knight f6 and d6. So flexibility is the watchword as we begin our investigation. Okay, basically the typical Sicilian Kan position is reached after the following moves. White plays e4, c5, knight f3 east, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, and now the elastic move a6. And I think this is a very good weapon for club players to adopt, basically because it's played rarely at that level among lesser players. Everybody concentrates on the Najdorf, the Dragon, the Sveshnikov. And in the rush to play these highly theorised openings, you know, the Kan is forgotten. And it's a perfectly reasonable way for black to play, as we will see. It's my perception that the average club player doesn't really have anything theoretical to show against this line, simply because they encounter it infrequently. You know, they're ready for the other lines, but not this one. And essentially a6 is a kind of very positive waiting move. You know, black is cutting white out of b5. He's preparing the move b5 himself. He doesn't commit himself to any particular piece placements or pawn configurations. So it's as an elastic as a move as you can find here. And usually, you know, 99 times out of 100, white is going to respond with one of three moves. We're going to take a look at knight c3 first, which I believe will be the most common move for the average player to have to face. Then the move which is played most at grandmaster level, bishop to d3. We're going to obviously have a very close look at that. And we'll finish off with a glance at the move c4, which, if there is a drawback to this particular move order from black's point of view, it has to be that white is able to play a Maroczy bind setup with c4. You're going to have to know how to handle those types of pawn structure when you play the Kan, where white, you know, delays the development of the knight to c3 and plays c4 instead. That can crop up in the bishop d3 line as well. But first of all, let's tackle the most straightforward move, knight to c3. And against that, I'm going to recommend the very aggressive reply b5. This is black's most ambitious attempt in this particular position. Black's intending to station his bishop on b7 as early as possible and put pressure on white's pawn at e4. That is the basic strategical idea and tactical idea in this position. Among modern grandmasters, the name of Peter Svidler stands out as a regular exponent of this line, and I believe this line will furnish very good results amongst average players who simply don't like, as white, the thought that the initiative is going to be taken away from them right at the start of the game, which is exactly what this ambitious move b5 strives to do. There are plenty of other moves for black in the position after knight c3, but b5 is straightforward and aggressive, and this is exactly what club players need. And the first game we're going to look at is a game between international master Dückstein from Austria and Grandmaster Bent Larsen. This game was played in 1959. Of course, Larsen wasn't a Grandmaster at that time. Instead, he was an ambitious young player rising through the ranks in world chess. And he was quite happy to use a move like b5 because his idea is to basically to put maximum pressure on the opponent with either white or black and strive to win the game by any means possible. And so b5 is ideally suited for a stronger player to put pressure on the weaker player by trying to take the initiative right from the word go. And sure enough, it works in this game because Dückstein responds passively with a3. Now you might look at that move and you would say, well, what an ugly move that is. Isn't that a waste of a move? Well, yes it is, but you know, a lot of your opponents may respond in this manner. They don't know anything concrete about b5. They become very scared about the opponent's activity, and so they try and cut out his primary idea of b4. I think you're going to have to face this move quite often in club chess, and so it's as well to see exactly how Larsen responds. Bishop b7, a natural move. What we could easily transpose to here is a variation of the Sicilian Najdorf, where the move a3 is of zero value. At least that's what black's got to try to prove. And seeing the pressure building against e4 already, Dückstein plays bishop d3. Bishop c5, very ambitious, typical Larsen. I mean, I think a perfectly reasonable move for black in this position, if you don't like bishop c5, which of course is reasonable in itself, is d6. And we're going to get some sort of Scandinavian position or Najdorf position where a3 has no bearing on the position whatsoever. And black's plan after d6 is very straightforward. He's just going to go knight d7, he'll go knight f6, he'll go bishop e7, he'll go rook c8. All very normal Sicilian moves with pressure on the c file and against e4. And you know, black is basically going into a normal Sicilian position with the move a3 thrown in, which can't be that great for white. But Larsen's move is entirely consistent with his style of the day. He was going after players, he felt very confident. It's a very confident move, bishop c5, a most unusual placement for the bishop in the Sicilian. He sees that the knight on d4 is unprotected, so he hits the knight and gives white plenty to think about. That's the way to win games. And sure enough, Dückstein goes on to the defensive. He defends his knight, Larsen hits the knight one more time, and now white has to go backwards with knight ce2. That can't be good, but okay, white can still maintain equality in this position if he's careful. However, in order to do this, he's got to head into a position which is not especially easy to play. And you'll see what I mean after e5, knight f5, g6. Now, by far the most modest way to play this position is simply to take on c5 and go knight e3. Of course, black is very reasonably placed after knight f6 in this position. Black has a very good game. I mean, he's hitting e4. He's got a beautifully placed queen. He can castle, then he can look to play d5. Black has the normal Sicilian trumps in this position. However, that would probably have been the best way for white to play, because at least here he doesn't compromise his pawn structure. Going back to the game, Dückstein decides to play b4 and regrets that move the whole game through. In fact, this game is a story of white overextending with his pawns in order not to try and win the game, but to just try and keep some sort of parity in the position. And, well, I mean, b4 can't be good. The open c file was a typical avenue for black in the Sicilian. Well, all white's done when he plays b4 is to assist black's counterplay on the c file. And you'll see exactly what I mean as we go through this game. Anyway, there's a capture on e3. Black brings out his knight, hitting e4. White defends the knight. Black plays d6. Castles, castles. Queen f3. Knight bd7. And now it's time to summarise the opening. And well, it's gone very well for Black. You know, Black's central pawns marry very well with his bishop on b7. Black's next moves will certainly include rook c8, putting pressure along the c file. e4 is certainly something for White to worry about. The c4 square is something for White to worry about. The only square in the Black camp I'm slightly concerned about is d5. If a White knight could hop into d5 and not be removed, then White might be getting himself back into the game. And that's exactly what Dukstein tries to do with g4. It looks like a crazy move, opening up the king. But the fact is, White's going to go g5, then he's going to put the knight on d5. So it's this type of move which White has to play if he wants to maintain some sort of equality in the position. But again, g4 is a move Dukstein comes to regret. Not sure, however, with rook c8 coming up, exactly what White should have played. I really don't see it. I mean, if he puts a knight in on d5 straight away, for instance, well, Black can take that and take once more, and then just simply play f5. And White's got all the same problems that he had before, and e4 is a threat as well. So this will be most uncomfortable for White. Therefore, this is why he goes g4. Okay, rook c8, good move, hitting c3, interrupting White's plan. Dukstein goes backwards, and now a move which is really typical Larsen of the day, I should say. d5, an ambitious pawn sacrifice, not a pawn sacrifice which when White takes, Black's going to get that pawn back straight away. No, Black's idea is to open up the game and to try to take advantage of the loose White king. Please note, if you're trying to assess the position, what sort of compensation does Black have for his pawn, please note the two active Black rooks, whereas White's rooks haven't yet come into the game. So Black has plenty of compensation for his pawn, more than enough. He's got pressure all over the position, and White's got very loose pawns. So, and a tough defence. Nobody likes defending, and as you'll see, Dukstein isn't really up to the job as we go through this game. Well, Queen comes to d4. Black was hitting d5, so White is forced into this uncomfortable move, bishop e4. And now Black played h6. When I first saw this game, I thought rook c3 was the most natural move. But after that, I think rook fd1 saves the day for White. And when the Queen retreats, let's say to b6, White can continue with g5. This would be a variation where White's striking back, not something that Black would want. And so Larsen takes a little bit of time out to stop the move g5 and encourages White to play a further weakening move h4, which is exactly what Dukstein did. I should stress once again that these pawn moves by White can't be taken back. They are very good in the sense that they're fighting to keep the initiative alive from White's point of view, but they're very bad in the sense that, you know, White's king position is becoming severely weakened, and as you'll see, Black is able to take advantage of that as the game progresses. First of all, though, he hops into the active square c3, and White plays rook fd1. That move, rook c3, was tactically well founded, because if White goes in for the fork, Black can take on e4 with the Queen, and White loses material. So rook fd1, hitting the Queen, Queen b6, and now Dukstein's next move tells me that he's not very happy with his position. King to g2. I think that is a definite mistake, and the reason it's a mistake, it's a naive move. It strays onto the same diagonal as the Black bishop. Now Black might not be able to take advantage of that for quite some time, but the fact is such a move is horrendously risky, and well, probably more sensible was Queen e2, and just try to get one of the active Black pieces off the board, planning rook to d3, just getting the Queen off the long diagonal. That would have been a more cautious way to play the position, and infinitely preferable to King g2. But it's pressure all the way from Larsen that is provoking these mistakes out of Dukstein. And now Queen d8 is another excellent move, eyeing h4. Rook d2. Okay, if white goes g forward, g5, lurching forward, black simply takes and goes knight h7. And the pawn on g5 is falling, so white shouldn't do that. Therefore, rook d2. Knight comes to b6. Rook a d1. And then knight comes into c4. Rook to d3. For an instant, it looks as though white is conducting a successful reorganisation. But black continues to hammer away with active moves. And it's not the extra pawn, really, that counts in this position. It's the initiative and the looseness of white's king. At every stage, white's king position is hampering him from going forward in this position. And now I suppose black's simply threatening to take on e4 and take on d5. White plays a sensible move, queen e2, vacating the long diagonal. But now another very good move by Larsen, rook to d4. f3. Okay, white can take on d4. Black recaptures, and now suddenly there are weaknesses appearing all over the white camp. So f3 was played, trying to shore up the position. But now bishop takes d5. And finally, black regains his pawn. A full 12 moves after sacrificing the pawn. It's this type of long-term vision that separates the grandmaster from the average player. And it's a long-term vision which Larsen, even at that stage, at early stage in his chess career, was showing why he was going to become one of the world's top players. So bishop takes d5. White's not even material ahead for his lousy position here. He takes back with the pawn on e4. Of course, if he takes back with the knight, then knight d5 is exceptionally strong, with a fork on f4 very much in the offing. White doesn't like that. Black takes on d3. This is essentially a normal position where white's just hamstrung by his weak king. And now queen c8. Another excellent move. The queen radiates power. She's hitting g4. She's hitting c2. h5. Again, very much lurching forward, but what else was white to play? If he goes king h3, protecting the pawn, h5 is a complete wipeout. Going back, if he plays g5, we just go through with the traditional mechanism, takes in knight h7, and once again, white's position